Again, welcome to the 2021 Virtual Summer School Series, Moving Extension Forward, Lessons and Strategies from the Pandemic. We're excited to have so many of you joining us today. I know we had over 160 registered for today's session, so that's so great. I'm Diane Mashburn, Extension Instructor with the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture. Our Virtual Summer School Series is co-sponsored annually by the Southern Region Program Leaders Network Program and Staff Development Committee and the National Association of Extension Program and Staff Development Professionals. And thank you to all those who contributed to planning this important and timely series. Today's session is extending extension programmatic efforts online. And this is kind of a transition day in our series. We've been focusing on internal professional development, and now we're going to turn more programmatic. And today we have two great groups of presenters. Our first team of presenters comes from the University of Nebraska Extension. So we have Holly Hatton-Bowers, Assistant Professor. We have Lisa Kaslon, Professional Development Coordinator, and Carrie, Gottschalk, Engagement Zone Coordinator. Then they'll be followed by our team from Penn State Extension. We have John Emigh, Director of Marketing and Digital Education, and Renee, Pusey, Talent and Professional Development Coordinator. We also have two great co-facilitators assisting us with Q&A today. We have Danae Wolf from Ohio State University Extension and Christy Farner from University of Georgia Extension. So thank you to all of our presenters and our facilitators today. So with that, we will turn things over to our first team of presenters from University of Nebraska.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. We're very excited to share some of the work that we've been championing through the University of Nebraska Extension for quite some time. So you may be wondering, how does employee wellness fit into this idea of online professional development learning and moving some of the work that we've done through the pandemic? So we're going to give a little bit of history about how we got to where we are today, and how the pandemic kind of helped with some of the work that we're doing in terms of the extension and employee wellness. So Carrie, if you go back to the other slide, sorry. Thank you. So our objectives really today are to learn about the ways we led and developed and created a formal internal employee wellness committee, and how the pandemic, having everyone work remotely and online, sort of spearheaded that work. And so we'll share a little bit more about what we're doing and where we're going, and then identifying some ways to use some of these strategies to champion extension employee wellness in organization and programs. Next slide. Okay, so some quick brief history, and you can always contact us if you want to get more specific information. We wanted to quickly just share that one of the reasons that we really, as many of you may know, is that employees who feel and are well are going to have higher productivity, higher positive engagement, there's less time from work, and decreased sick time. So that's obviously something we want to see among our employees. Also, Nebraska Extension employees, we, knowing this was so important, completed a survey in 2018. And one of the identified needs by those who completed the survey was to have improved work-life balance and creating a respect-filled and supportive work environment. So this led to a strategy group, which I co-led with a group of other wonderful extension colleagues. And we identified some ways and strategies that we might be able to support that collective effort to have this workplace and personal professional well-being. So that led to our strategy group, which then led to some takeaway and suggestions of messages. We had a conference that we have annually, the fall conference, and that again led to some ideas about what would extension employees want to see in terms of how an organization like Nebraska Extension could support their wellness. And so in 2019, we began identifying some effective and research-based ways to support extension employee wellness. And in this led then, all of this work really led to the 2020, where we are in the 2020 pandemic, and really started looking at some ways to engage in employee wellness through Zoom and other online opportunities. Next slide. And so one of these I just wanted to share through the pandemic is we started to collect through Qualtrics, the weekly discovery report. So the Dean of Extension at the time Dean Hibbard asked employees to share feedback about how they were doing through the pandemic. It was a weekly report, their feelings. So it was a weather report. Do you feel rainy and stormy? Do you feel mild? Or do you feel partly and all sunshine? So here on the, you can see in the graph, I know it's small, but just to quickly highlight that you can see there are some about, going from in April, right, when a lot of us were moved, asked to start working remotely, 35% are saying that they're sunny, and then to June where 45% are kind of in the sunny, and you can see some shift in between. What was really helpful about this survey was that there was also personal written feedback about why certain reasons people might be feeling rainy and stormy or mild. And so here you can see one of the quotes from an extension employee was, "We polled our team about how they feel about going back to the office. There were no positive responses. Overwhelmingly, the answers were anxious and nervous. I am concerned for our team's mental health." What was, it wasn't just collecting this feedback that was, I think, effective. It was that we would summarize that feedback, identify some themes. The leadership team for Extension would then share that with the dean, and then they would come up with some actionable items that they could actually respond to with some resources. So it might be providing, how can you be ergonomically sound if that's a resource you need. Here's some research-based ways to do that. If it was about how do we support staff in feeling less anxious, then let's give them some information. And that would occur at a chat with Chuck at the time is what it was called. Now it's the Dean's Huddle, which was a way for all of Extension to use that online forum to learn about what some of the concerns were, what was working well, and then some actionable ways to support employee wellness. And then this led to what Carrie will talk about.
Still muted. Okay, thanks, Holly. Hi, my name is Carrie Gottschalk, and I have had the privilege of being in Nebraska Extension for 5 years now. My first 3.5 years were as a county-based educator. In the past 18 months, I have served as an engagement zone coordinator. I have a background in mental health, stress, trauma, vicarious trauma, and compassion fatigue, and so personal well-being, including mental, emotional, and behavioral health and wellness, have all been key priorities for me throughout my career and continue to be a driving force in the role in which I currently serve. So knowing there was interest and need prior to COVID, we knew this issue wasn't going anywhere post-COVID. And therefore it seemed like an ideal time to really dig in and formalize the work that was started in 2018. The data can really vary depending on where you look, what questions were asked during certain surveys, and when surveys occurred. Regardless, there is no disputing that stress and chronic stress for US workers, including Extension employees, is rising. Employees are reporting increased levels of work-related stress, are considering more and more changing jobs as a result of stress. Absenteeism and healthcare costs are increasing as a result of chronic stress. So there are a lot of ways to analyze maybe what could be considered a return on investment and or value on investment of an employee wellness program, including the cost of not taking action. So common organizational costs associated with poor workplace well-being include high medical, disability, and workers' compensation, high absenteeism, as has already been stated, poor employee retention, high turnover, decreased productivity, et cetera, poor satisfaction, and reduced morale. And so if we're strictly focusing on value on investment, which is more of the non-financial benefits of workplace well-being, you can see the list here includes a redefined workplace culture, improved employee job satisfaction, increased employee productivity, heightened employee morale, greater employee retention rates, better employee energy levels at work, improved on-the-job satisfaction, improved on-the-job safety, increased camaraderie, team effectiveness, and here's a highlighted one is reduced presenteeism, which is overworked employees. And so therefore really the pitch per se to administration became, we can't afford to not take action. taking action really is a win-win for everyone. If we focus on, as Holly initially stated, employees who feel and are well, we are going to have a benefit across the office space. We're going to have a benefit across programming teams, and ultimately we're going to have a benefit throughout the organization. And so extension professionals are notoriously wonderful at caring for others and giving to clients, always trying to do more and reach more. And it is at this time that we truly need to elevate the importance of caring for ourselves with the same level of care and concern. And so with administrative support in both time and value, we moved forward creating an organizational framework that was both employee driven and sustainable. We began by soliciting employees across the state who had previously shown interest, as well as wanting to ensure broad representation of both geography and role. The Wellness Committee would serve as a hub for all internal wellness work. Each person on the inaugural committee really just agreed to an initial one-year term as we were building the plane, as we were flying it. And moving forward, the hope and intention is to have 3-year terms spaced among the committee, and with internal wellness committee leadership transitioning annually. Okay, sorry. And so finally, the benefit of participating on the committee. So the question might be, why would I want to volunteer my time to participate in this internal wellness committee? So going back to administrative support, it's because the time is included. So there's a recognition of time and value. So the committee time that you spend during the work time is a part of your work day, and that is recognized as a service to the organization. And thus it should be reported to your supervisor and included on your annual evaluation. And so with that, I will turn it over to Lisa, who's going to share more about the opportunities.
Thanks, Carrie. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Kaslon, and I have been with Nebraska Extension for 25 years. My current role is Professional Development Coordinator. I've been a 4-H assistant educator, a variety of roles over the course of those 25 years. And this role has really provided me the opportunity to work with this team now to think about how we take all that work that has been put into employee wellness, how we've gotten to where we are, and put it into some action, and really to define it as professional development. I think that was a realization for me that wellness really can come from learning and developing yourself in ways that help you be more well. And so as we move to today's topic, really around what were our online opportunities for people around wellness, a couple of really important points. We wanted to make sure that we provided these opportunities to all employees in Extension, regardless of title, role, or location. And as we all know, sometimes things get offered in certain ways to certain roles or certain departments, certain parts of the state. And we knew wellness is important for everyone in our system. So all of the opportunities you're going to see us talk about were open to everyone. And we really focused on finding facilitators, speakers, and presenters that had expertise and experience in the topic, because we wanted to make sure that what we provided was to the most benefit for our employees. So our first opportunity, and we are really blessed that both Carrie and Holly are certified facilitators of mindfulness. And so this was really an automatic with the expertise we have with you today, as well as in our organization. And many of you have heard about mindfulness. It's the practice of purposefully bringing one's attention to the present and the moment. And we were able to use mindfulness a couple of different ways. Holly offered some opportunities that talked about mindfulness in the workplace, gave people, 4 sessions to really dig in and practice and learn. And Carrie offered an opportunity weekly for several months in which people could join for a short period of time and just stop the day. As we all know, the days were going very fast and the Zooms were happening every hour. And the idea behind the midweek meditation was to stop and take some time to be present, to think about where you're at, what you're doing, and how you can move forward. Carrie will resume these midweek meditations, I think, here this fall. And so it's a piece that we're continuing to offer, something that people have responded very well to take the time for themselves. And now what I see happening is others using that with their clientele, that before we start a session or a program, having people stop and take a few moments just to become present with them, where they're at and where they're headed for that particular time together. So that was our first option. All of that was done online in a way where you could keep your video off and just participate in the session. The second opportunity we were able to do online, and this really started, I'll read this quote to you in just a second. This really started, we call them Wellness Fridays, but they started as our fall conference connector activity. And that was really all I had in mind when I planned them, that, hey, the second morning of fall conference, we need some activities for people to get together, and they're not going to be at the breakfast table in the hotel. They're not going to be out taking a walk together at the conference. How can we do that online? So we had a variety of activities planned. We had educators and staff step up to the plate to help lead them. And after that session, I got this quote: "These networking sessions are so important to our mental health and wellness. In a normal year, I have heard several extension educators say they feel very isolated and alone in their county. Many are not from Nebraska or not close to their family, and it does get difficult to build relationships when you first start an extension. This year has been hard for many, as we are so isolated due to the pandemic. We need these networking sessions. We need to check in routinely with each other. Thank you so much for continuing these network opportunities. Such a great way to keep us all connected and well." And that's a quote from one of our educators. And what struck me when I read that was her reference to wellness, mental health, and well. There's 3 times that's stated in that quote. And it was a light bulb moment for me as a professional development coordinator to say, okay, this was more than just getting them together. This is helping people in lots of ways. And so what we were able to do was to create a further opportunity and have Wellness Fridays every month. And this was, I will say we were granted permission, because this was something that was a little bit different, to say, hey, can we spend a day in our organization, and it's the last Friday of the month is designated as a Wellness Friday. We all know wellness doesn't happen in one day, but it was an opportunity for our system to hold a day and to step back and connect with others and build in some wellness in a variety of ways. And you can see I've listed some of the examples. Some of them were actual physical activity where they get on and they were in a group doing some workouts in the morning, boot camps, morning movement. We had some cooking classes where the group would get together and talk about a social event, but also then learning some really healthy opportunities. One of them was breakfast club. Lots of groups were around just coffee and conversation. Like, I just have the need to get on and chat and interact with my colleagues. We did a nature challenge where they'd spend some time out in nature taking pictures and come back and share the pictures and talk about their reflections while they were out in nature. Another coffee discussion was around cows, corn, and coffee. So you can join if you wanted to talk about that. We had some financial discussions. We had conversations on being more productive and effective. Whoops, I have Breakfast Club listed twice there, my apology, but they also did a Cooking to Connect. They moved it to later in the day and did some healthy snacks and healthy lunches. One of them was just a gaming session where they got together and played a variety of games. There were some running opportunities. And then this last month, a really cool opportunity, we had an educator step forward and say, I want to offer a session, a panel, to discuss how to parent and be a professional, and how to do this job while you have young kids at home. And so she had a panel discussion and they had great interaction. So these opportunities happen for us monthly. We've had excellent participation. All of it has been online and it's worked online, which has been fun. I'm getting questions now whether we can do these in areas of the state face-to-face, starting this fall again, and get people together in different ways. But it's been very powerful for our staff and faculty to reconnect, but also then maybe connect another wellness part of the wellness wheel into that conversation. Our third opportunity that we offered is around education and connection. And just as you can see, this is really the opportunity to give our staff some educational learning and the chance to grow and enhance their knowledge base around wellness related topics. And so monthly we have done these, and you can see the topics that we have offered. What is loss and grief theory? Staying active at work, self-care and connectedness, and then some COVID information around vaccines, which was a very positive and had a high response for people to get the information that they needed so that everyone was gaining the knowledge base that they needed to make the right decisions for themselves. We've had anywhere from 60 to 134 employees join these once a month for an hour. and 94 to 100% of them agree they've learned something new to use in their work or in their personal lives. So that's been an excellent, this will continue. We're continually thinking about topics and opportunities. And our fourth opportunity that I want to mention, so we've done, it's crazy when you start putting these on paper to realize all the things we have done and offered to our staff and faculty are some lunch and learns. And they are also geared towards knowledge and information. But in this case, we partnered with our food, health, and nutrition team, and they wanted to give their dietetic interns and graduate students opportunity to share their knowledge base, which was pretty cool to see. So monthly, there's a lunchtime research-based education opportunity for staff to join. And the topics here have been just all over the place and really well received. For those that have young children, there was one on feeding your baby. There's some on uprooting the stigma of plant-based diets. This next week is around nutrition's role in our mental well-being. And so the topics have been vast. It's been an excellent partnership. All of the opportunities that I've talked about, the last two around education are recorded so people can watch them when it best works for them. And so those are some of the other things. The last slide really highlights where we're headed with some additional opportunities. And I'll just quickly mention, we're talking about office, place, and space. So how do we have access to all the same wellness services across our extension program? Front Door Forum is our support staff conference, and we have given them administrative support to have wellness as a conference theme and approach. And so everything they're doing for 2 days is focused on wellness. We have a group called Reaching One, Reaching All. It's really our diversity, equity, and inclusion group. And they're offering professional development that is helping people think about their wellness as it relates to the cultural competency and at how they can honestly, this quote here really kind of says it. It honestly pointed out how I don't intentionally do it, but I have stereotypes and groups of people without fully understanding them. I need to seek to understand before judging. That is what I really walked away with. I really appreciated this talk. It's made me reflect and think. And so we're really trying to put out opportunities for our staff to grow as people. And we know that includes recent conversations around DEI issues. And so that's another place we're continuing. We believe that will lend itself to wellness in our organization. And the last two are very interesting. I've always, done onboarding, but how do we grow that? How do we do that better? Well, one step we've taken is to do exit interviews of all of our staff and to glean data from that relates to wellness. This quote spoke to me. Not feeling like a valued member of Nebraska Extension, not knowing my supervisor, and at times not feeling that I could trust those around me. That's not a good thing for us as administrators or as staff to read and feel like people have left our organization in a good way. And so this particular person might not have been well when they were with us, which probably led to performance issues. And so we're trying to take the exit interview data, do a better job with onboarding, do a better job with training and development, and making sure that people do feel valued, because when they feel valued and respected, as Holly mentioned earlier, they're better employees and they're well. So you can also see a link to a website there. These are all the different things that we've been doing and plan to continue to do. I'm really excited what face-to-face provides for an opportunity for some of these things for us moving forward, because they have worked online. And so with that, I'll let Holly wrap us up.
Thank you. So I think probably really key to a lot of this work we've been doing is having continuous feedback. So taking information from extension employees about what is working, what can we do differently, what can we offer now. As Lisa said, we're going to be coming back together in person. And so what are some of these wellness opportunities that we can do in person, as well as continuing some of our online offerings, like the weekly meditation, right? So that it really can be an offering across the state for those who want to participate. So we continue efforts to collect information in those evaluation surveys and feedback, and growing our wellness activities. I think something to really highlight is that we have a wellness committee, and those are the drivers who have different, as Carrie said, different positions and focus. And so I think that really helps make sure that we are addressing, diverse needs of the whole organization in terms of wellness. And then identifying effective ways to respond to extension employees' wellness needs. I think something that we're continuing to move forward with, and Carrie and Lisa, I welcome your thoughts on this too, is that sometimes we have county positions, people in the county, and so how it's just having that continued messaging and throughout the organization so that we can support employee wellness in our different ways with our respective positions. So I just think that's something that we'll continue to move forward with and learn from. And I don't know if you have any last thoughts, Lisa or Carrie, about our wellness work.
Okay. Thank you so much, Holly, Lisa, and Carrie. If you guys have any questions for them, I see some great questions being put in the Q&A, so go ahead and keep doing that. While you're thinking about any other questions you have, we're going to switch over to our Penn State group. So we have Renee and John ready to talk about their efforts.
All right, thank you, Diane. John and I are excited to be here representing Penn State Extension, and we'd like to start off with a quick poll. So we're interested in knowing, have you been involved in the design and or delivery of digital education or virtual programs? So if you'll just answer that question, yes or no, that will get us a little bit of information about our audience. All right, so as we suspected, 88% of you have been involved in design or delivery of digital education or virtual programs. So we're not going to get into too much of the basics since you already are experienced, but we're going to share with you what Penn State Extension has done to extend our programs in that space. And John, I'm going to turn the mic over to you, and you have the slides.
Thanks, Renee. Appreciate it. Once again, my name is John Emigh. I'm the Director of Marketing and Digital Education in the College of Ag Sciences. I've been here just over 9 years with the college and with Penn State Extension. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about our transition during COVID and our response in online education. And to do so, we just thought it'd be helpful to take a step back to understand how we got here, because in our college, we didn't just get here. Our response was not by luck. It was the result of a lot of planning that happened over the course of many years that just happened to coincide with a pandemic. So, you know, for us, we started a project called Atlas about 7 years ago. And for us, what that was is, you know, really shifting the organization to think about how customers want information, when they want it and where they want it. And those of you who have been around a long time may remember a Copernicus study that was done just over probably about 12 years ago now, which was a national survey regarding extension with also state overlays. And what we saw in that research at that time was that, you know, people's time availability was shifting, how they were learning was shifting, how they wanted to consume information was changing. And we took a step back to say, how do we position ourselves to meet the various demands of people? You know, if they can't always get to a workshop or read a publication, you know, how do we connect with them online? How do we connect with them in their living room? That's obviously where the world is going. And so that was really a driver for a project that we put together, which we called our Atlas Initiative. And really what it was we had a business strategy, which really set at the very highest level, let's transform how we deliver our education to everyone. Let's think about the products. And by products, I mean, what educational delivery, what types of educational delivery do we want? And what we did there is we came up with a defined product portfolio. So 10 core ways that we deliver education. From there, we talked about the experience. So there's an experience that happens when you're out in the field or you're at a workshop in person. But what about that online experience? You know, we get 20,000 visitors, you know, to a website. We need to think about what that experience looks like and give it as much love and care as we would if there were 20,000 people lined up at a county office. And lastly, you know, how do you tie that together with your marketing to make sure that you can support this new ecosystem? And so for us, what we did after that was just wrap the people, processes, and technology around that. So what that looked like for us is that, you know, coming out of this, we had 3 key initiatives that really set us up well to respond during a pandemic that I want to talk about. And that's our product, our experience, and our marketing. You know, before we went into this process, what we did is we asked ourselves, you know, we need to really be focused on the customer. And every time we're making a decision, you know, think about you know, how do they want to interact with us? Not our internal structure, our model, our legacy, And that can be painful for everyone involved, in the organization, but we really put the customer first. And we really shift to a unified strategy. We talked about one extension a lot here at Penn State. And that's a unified model that allows for some standardization and ability to scale. And once again, really set us up well, for the pandemic. And so really coming out of that, we had these three strategies. I talked about product strategy, experience, and also the marketing. And these are not to be read. Obviously, this is not how you deliver slides, but we ask hundreds and hundreds of questions around each of these strategies that helped us form our strategic implementation of our Atlas initiative. And here's just a flavor of them. But when you're thinking about your products, what's the ROI? How do you build them? Who's involved in it? What's the paid content? Is there free content or paid content? How do you support it with customer support? We ask hundreds of questions, and we did that for our product strategy. We did that for our experience. How do people want to engage with us? And then we did that for our marketing considerations as well. And really what that did was it allowed us we ask a lot of tough questions to say, if this all works and we transform our organization to be able to reach people where they want it, when they want it, and how they want it, do we have the infrastructure to support it? And so once we had all of that done and we had our strategy of how we wanted to transform, and deliver education, then we wrapped our technology around it, which was really key and set us up well for the pandemic. Our technology, what we did is we decided to integrate everything. And I'm not going to get into a lot of technology jargon here and talk about what each of these platforms does. But we did things such as Salesforce, which was a centralized CRM, and moved all our contacts to one database. And what that allowed us to do was send out an email like this to 150,000 people and tell them something about the pandemic. We shifted all of our events into a Cvent platform, which allowed us to switch within a matter of days from in-person activity to delivering education through webinar format. We have an online course portfolio that's Open edX, which allows us to consistently deliver online education. And what this standardization did across the organization was really position us well to better reach our customers, do it more efficiently and more effectively. So really, what did the mean in the COVID response? I really want to talk about three core areas. And as I talked about before, that product line, there are really three that set us up to be successful during the pandemic. I want to talk about a little bit. So the first were videos. We've been doing videos for years now, really short form videos that are 7 minutes or under, that really gets out evergreen content to people. So obviously, if you have that library and that content that's online, when you're in a pandemic and people are sitting at home, that's obviously very valuable. And so we had an infrastructure around how to build the content, our video content. And then we had our webinars. When we started this project 8 years ago, we had, a few dabbling, and I shouldn't say a few, a smaller subset of the organization dabbling in webinars. And that was growing as, Zoom started to expand in other technologies, but obviously not like it has today. So even talking about webinars 7 years ago is very different than it is today. And then our online courses, which are asynchronous online course experiences that we deliver through a learning platform. So if you're familiar with a Coursera or an edX or Udemy, something very similar to that. And so what we did, we made some changes. What we did during the pandemic was, even though we were delivering, video content, we made some changes to more efficiently do that. So we really defined our types. Prior to the pandemic, we were doing all of our video production in-house. We were doing cameras, people on camera. We were doing a lot of the multimedia work. But what we did is we also brought in a short form video concept that provided some best practices and tools for people to do video out in the field, and streamlined workflows for them to get that video for us to maybe put some branding on it, or for them just to drop it into, social media or wherever they needed it. So we really provided training and resources around that, and best practices and guidelines, and increased our capacity. And what we saw is that there was, obviously, as people were out in the field or they were at home, they were able now to fill a void with a short form video, which allowed them to get content out to their constituents and customers quicker. On the webinar side, sure, we were doing webinars and we were delivering it through Zoom, and we have a centralized team that builds out all of our websites. But when you transition hundreds and hundreds of in-person events to webinars, you're obviously going to have a learning curve of nuances of different programs that you have to think about. So this was our primary shift in online education, like many. And what we did is we updated our workflows and our processes to streamline them, to make sure that any educator could fill out a form and get a webinar into a queue, and that our team could build that. We modified our registration templates to think about how sessions work in a webinar, or how a conference works online. And then we've implemented those templates to meet broader needs of the organization. And then we really had to think about all the customer touch points. For us, we have a centralized customer service team, which is a tremendous value when you get into something like this. But then you have to think about consistency. So if you have a webinar and you're delivering files, let's say after a webinar, or recording after a webinar, or you're delivering information before a webinar, how do you do that consistently at scale? So if someone picks up on the customer service line and says, "How may I help you?" and someone says, "I did not get a link to the recording of the webinar I attended," that's not, the answer to that is not 50 different answers, or it's not based on program team or educator, that we have one consistent process to do that. And so what we did is we looked at all those touch points and implemented processes to standardize that as much as possible. And then we also did have to hire, some part-time people to help fill voids in areas such as accessibility and managing recordings, just to give you a flavor of what we did there. And then on the online course side of things, we had an online course portfolio of about 60 courses. It's about 85 now, the asynchronous courses. And we did offer those all for free during a period. They do have a small fee with them. And what that allowed us to do was actually, and I'll talk about that in the lessons learned, but it really allowed us to position ourselves and have a story to tell during the pandemic. So what we really did is use that, not just to say we have free courses, but it was sort of our way to reach out to the community, to Pennsylvanians during this time, to show that we were stepping up in some way to provide education. And so when it came to the delivery of those, or development of those online courses, we really had to get, prioritize our development and increase our capacity to obviously get more content online. And then we did those campaigns, like we used Salesforce to do industry campaigns or mass campaigns to reach these audiences and position ourselves for growth. So the results of this were, for us, we had, over 613,000 online course and webinar registrants during the first year of what I'll call the first year of the pandemic, the first 12-month period. And I'll say that's probably about a 80-20 split, on 80% of that being webinars, 20% on online courses. And this does include work from our Better Kid Care group that's not part of that ecosystem. I should mention and give them credit for their great work. But not part of that ecosystem I mentioned as well. We had over 24 million page views during that time on our website, which is really critical to our success because it's where we drive all of our marketing efforts to our online courses and our webinars and our free content and our articles. And we also had over 1 million YouTube views during that time of those videos, that video subset that I talked, or product line that I talked about before. So, what are our lessons learned, coming out of the pandemic? And I know I give you a very high level, overview of how our products are developed and distributed in the sort of ecosystem and strategy that we've built. And I'll just go through a few here. And the first really is that you define your brand. You control your brand based on the business model you put in place. We've heard from constituents and legislators and, clientele who were just amazed at how we were able to respond. And now they really think of Penn State Extension in a different way. They think of us as an agile organization, or one that quickly can respond, and actually one that was maybe out ahead of where online learning was headed in the future. And so it's really helped shape conversations in a different way, and given us a way to position our brand. Next was that change is tough, right? And it's going through that process I talked about. It was tough, but now we take a step back, and I think everyone who has bumps and bruises from it says, you know what, that might have been worth it. And I can see the value of going through that change management process to get where we are today. Build for the future, not today. We often talk about if we build for where our competitors are, whether that's industry or whoever, if we build for where they are today, when we get there, we'll still be 5 years behind. And so you need to really look forward to where education is headed and how people are going to learn. investment in infrastructure is key, and obviously big picture, and I think everyone already knows this, but internal and external learning curves have been accelerated and expectations increased coming out of this. So, people are not just attending webinars with us, they're attending, webinars with other organizations and looking to how they manage, how do they collaborate, how do they create engagement, how do they register, how do they share files and information. And internally, I think learning curves have been accelerated, which is great when you're trying to drive maybe some change management in your organization. The pandemic has helped, accelerate that process. On our operations side, really for us, it was integration is critical. Whether it's you're talking about program teams working together and how they collaborate and how they're functional and how they come up with content. I mean, that's where it all happens. They're the rock stars of this organization, our educators and our faculty. So the integration of them and working as program teams and being functional is, I think, the number one key of why we're so successful. But it also comes down to integration of just teams. It's important for a customer service team to be at a table working with a marketing group to understand how products are developed and the nuances to them so they can serve customers as they call. Standardization is critical to scaling. My past experience, I worked in an industry that was very seasonal, and 80% of business happened around the holidays. And we used to say, well, it'll work in June, but is it going to work in December? And that's how we approach everything we're doing at Penn State Extension, to say, well, that will work, maybe in our slower periods or our lower enrollment, maybe areas, but if we really ramp this up, will we be able to scale? And it's important to test as you scale, obviously. And then training is important, but it's incredibly time consuming, was something we brought out of this. And I think everyone knows that, but I think really for us, we've been wrapping our heads around how do we get more people at the table and focused on training, whether it's, usage of a new technology, how we engage with our customers, or how we develop our products and services. And so in the go forward for us, what are we looking at was something we just wanted to talk about. We're thinking about more enhanced webinar experiences. So, more pre-work, post-work, more collaboration, integrating that with a learning management system. What does that advanced, sort of webinar experience look like? Blended learning, in person and online. How do you tie those experiences? For us, how do you get someone to maybe do some pre-work online, maybe take an exam that gives them, some sort of verification that they've met some sort of learning level, and then how do they come in person and maybe verify those skills and do hands-on learning? And how do you take all of that and tie it together into a learning journey that maybe builds on workforce development or credentials or stackable credentials? And that's really the next phase for us, is how do we tie all these educational experiences into those learning journeys that really create those lifelong, partnerships and relationships with our clientele. And obviously with, technology, enhancements sort of, wrap all that up, underneath it to make sure that we have everything we need to support our clientele. So that's what I had to share today. Just in summary for us, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, like for everyone, but for us, we were really excited that we had this Atlas initiative, and really fortunate that we had really forward-thinking leadership, whether that's, the very highest level is dean's level, or an associate director of programs in our group that leads the program teams, faculty, educators, that really grabbed onto this when we were talking about it 5 years, to think about, let's focus on how customers are learning, the learning obstacles they have, and where education might be going. And that positioned us really well to respond. And it's given us a great foundation to grow on into the future.
Great. Thank you so much, John and Renee.
Nice of you.
And we'd also appreciate your feedback on today's session. There are a couple ways to access that survey. You can either follow the link we'll be sharing in the chat, or you can use your phone and scan the QR code that'll be shown in the closing slides in just a second. So have those phones ready to go. And in closing, we invite you to join us for tomorrow's session. Our Thursday session is with Presenters from Texas AgriLife Extension and the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture for their session on taking a non-traditional route to delivering traditional extension programs. You can visit the NAEPSDP website to register for any of the remaining sessions in the series. So again, thank you to our wonderful presenters today. Thank you to our facilitators and to everybody in attendance. We hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all tomorrow.